What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Dave and I'm a photographer and videographer from the Bay Area of California. Today I'm sitting here in Pacifica just looking out at the waves and this beautiful spring day here in the Bay. Now I came out here because I'm waiting to pick up my cousin from the airport at SFO. He's flying in from Italy. I've got like an hour to kill, so I came out here to just sit and relax on this nice quiet beach. And I figured while we're out here, we could talk about the different types of cameras that are on the market. One of the questions we often ask is about gear. Now, this is not a gear channel, and I never wanted it to be fully about gear, but the type of gear that we use does give us a certain experience. And one of the things that I've really learned myself over the many years I've been doing this is that there really is no such thing as bad gear. There's just the right gear for the job and gear that inspires you. But I don't want to make today's conversation all about what does and doesn't make sense and have some camera debate going on in the comments. Rather, what I'd like to do today is just tell you about the 4 types of cameras that I use, when I use them, and why I use them. And since I'm doing that, we might as well take some photos here at Pacifica, right? So the first camera up on the list of cameras that I use is the iPhone, or whatever mobile camera you have. We'll just call this a mobile camera. If the world was ending and there was an apocalyptic moment where we could have to grab one camera to use as photographers for the rest of our days and carry it with us, I would grab this one. No, I wouldn't grab my Leica, I would grab this. Because for me, this iPhone camera is my everyday camera. It is probably the one that I shoot the most on at the end of the year. If I was to look at how many photos I've taken this year, probably most of them were on the iPhone. I use my phone for everyday life. I can use it anywhere or everywhere, and it does a good enough job for most of what I need. Now, I'm a father, I've got 2 small kids. The iPhone is really perfect for candid moments with the kids. Now, that doesn't mean I don't use my other cameras for them, but I use the iPhone 90% of the time because it's with me and because it does a good enough job at capturing them. Another great thing about mobile photography is the many apps that you can use to style your photos. Honestly, that just gives you a ton of options to really dial in what you want for the style that you want to shoot in. Okay, let's talk about number 2, the point and shoot. I bought this Fuji X100V in 2021. Now, I sold this camera in 2022 to a friend of mine and he loaned it back to me for this video. This camera is tiny. It's actually smaller than the iPhone. Without the lens hood on it, it'll fit right in your pocket, easy to carry around, super discreet. Honestly, it's a great point and shoot. There's other point and shoots out there too, like the Ricoh, as well as Canon, Sony, Nikon. All these companies make point and shoots. For me, the point and shoot didn't really have a place in my life because at the end of the day, when I want to use a point and shoot, I just use my phone. But a lot of people really love this camera, and if you dare say anything negative about the Fuji X100 series, Gen Z will show up in your comments and rip you apart. As an elder millennial, I have experienced this numerous times. I think the point and shoot has a place in many photographers' lives because you want something a little better than maybe your mobile device, but you want something small and discreet. Now, when I bought this for shooting in cities because I didn't want to draw any attention to myself, wanted something small that could slip into my pocket. Say I was walking around San Francisco or whatever, no one's gonna notice this camera. So it's really great for that. But you can take fantastic photos with a camera like this. I think what you've got to ask yourself about a point and shoot is what your goals are going to be. For me, like I said, I just shot the iPhone and I really don't want to edit point and shoot files. And so I just prefer to shoot on JPEG on a point and shoot. So the Fuji X100 made all the sense in the world because you can put on those film recipes and get these kinds of shots that are beautiful right out of the camera. But then I found myself thinking they were too styled and left me with no flexibility should I have one that I did want to edit. I would just rather edit a flat JPEG out of the iPhone than a styled picture on my Fuji. Anyway, I know it's complicated. My personal relationship with a point and shoot, they're not for me, but that's when I would have used it, why I bought it, and what my intention was, even though a year later, I sold it off to my buddy. And just shout out to Jordan for letting me grab this from you for the week. Okay, so if someone is hiring you for a photo shoot, they're likely gonna expect you to show up with this camera. This is a mirrorless camera. This is my Sony A7RV. I have been with Sony for many years, and this has been a workhorse camera for me. Prior to this was the A7R4, then the A7R3, which was, I think, their best camera they've ever made. I would say in the same way this mirrorless camera has this design, you've also got DSLRs before this era of cameras. It looked the same for the most part, maybe a little bigger, but it's the same system, same idea. On a mirrorless camera though, what you see through the lens is actually what the sensor is picking up. A little different with the tech than DSLR, but at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. When people think of photography, they often think of cameras like this. Now, I still have my whole Sony kit, and I use it mostly for video, as this is a great hybrid camera, and I'm shooting on the A7S3 right now. But as a photographer, this camera doesn't get a ton of use anymore. If I need two things, this camera will come out, and that is speed and efficiency. A good example of this is last year, I was hired by a startup here in the Bay Area. It was an Indian company that is leasing saris for weddings and formal events, and they had hired like 12 models to shoot 120 dresses over 2 days. They hired me as their photographer, and I had a ton of fun doing this, but there was no way this was gonna happen to get through 12 models with 120 dresses. It just wasn't gonna happen with me on my Leica M system. I needed speed and I needed efficiency, and the autofocus is so reliable, it never misses, especially with the GM lenses. So really, that was the speed and efficiency that I needed to shoot on this. Otherwise, this camera doesn't come out too much because I do enjoy the rangefinder experience the most. But this camera takes fantastic photos. Now, I just can't bring myself to wear one of those mics, but if I was wearing one, you would have constantly heard the beeps of the autofocus nailing every single shot. It is trustworthy, it is efficient, it is a computer with a lens. This feature-rich camera, for me, is just not incredibly fun to use because it works harder than I do, and no camera should work harder than the creator. Unless you got to get work done, then you definitely want the camera to work harder than you. But from a enjoyment standpoint, it's really about the rangefinder for me. So the rangefinder is our fourth and final camera type on our list. A rangefinder is similar to a point and shoot in that it's small and can be discreet. If you look here, the Fuji and the Leica are not much different in size. I mean, I've got this giant 35 Summilux on here, and I say giant because there's much smaller 35 lenses. Even by those standards, it's still a pretty small lens. Rangefinder cameras don't have autofocus. You can put them in aperture priority or ISO priority, and that can be somewhat of an automatic camera experience, but for the most part, I personally shoot in aperture priority. I trust the lighting that I shoot in to give me a fast enough shutter for the shots that I want, but if I'm in low light, I put it in ISO priority because I rather have a grainy photo than a blurry photo. I love to see things as they are just through this pass-through here, rather than an LED screen on a mirrorless camera, or even my iPhone, which is also a screen. This is my only screenless camera. To me, the experience of shooting this camera gives me a ton of joy, and that gets me to shoot more. But you might feel that with a mirrorless camera, or with a point and shoot, or even with your phone. So this is not a competition or a what's right and wrong. It's more or less what you love. And for me, this is what I love. Ultimately, the camera you use is about you. What experience motivates you, elevates you, gets you shooting and creating. I mean, that's what it's all about. Don't ever let anyone tell you that what you have is not good enough, and don't get sucked in to that mindset that you've got to have this camera to make great work. Really, you can make great work with anything if you're just committed to making the work. Whether you shoot an iPhone, whether you shoot a point and shoot, a mirrorless camera, or a rangefinder, go out and shoot and just have fun. Create things that matter to you. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow along. Drop a comment and let me know the type of camera you shoot. I respond to every comment, so be sure to let me know below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.